On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
At the time we had, I don't know, 40 employees. And when you really want to, I have a limited amount of time I'm at work. So there's got to be some strategy to focus my efforts, right? Where I can allocate 4 hours a day and really compartmentalize that time. And here's the exact activities. There's freedom in routine, right? If I know I'm walking in and I've got these 3 hours dedicated to these 4 items, then I just go and bust it out. I don't have to, I'm not stressed out like, oh, what am I going to do today? And then you cloud your life with busy work. You go in, you execute the strategy, and you move on.
You are listening to Gathering the Kings with Chaz Wolfe, featuring fellow 7, 8, and even 9-figure business owners who have real battle scars from business and life, but have prevailed as the king that they are designed to be. We welcome high-performing entrepreneurs to the stage in order to reveal the real of the real on what it takes to build a successful business today. We dissect the good and bad decisions they've made along the way that give a true and accurate picture of the journey of success and how you too can get there. Through this dialogue, you will learn the value of growing your network and surrounding yourself with power players and kings like today's guest. Grab your pen and notebook because we're about to dive in. What's up, everybody? Chaz Wolfe. I'm your host, Gathering the Kings podcast. Today I've got Matt Walker on the King stage. My brother, how are you?
I'm doing excellent, man. How are you?
You know, I'm good. In fact, I was just thinking how much better I could be if I was in your neck of the woods in San Diego. Beautiful there, I assume.
Well, a little dreary today, but 70 degrees. So we take our licks. A cold winter here is like 45. So
yeah, well,
we're pretty lucky.
Yeah, those are 45 will bring a jacket out or two, I bet, in your neck of the woods. But in all seriousness, appreciate you being here. Regardless of the sunshine, we can still be friends. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Great. What kind of business do you have, Matt? Or what business is?
Yeah, I have 3 companies that I own, and I just assumed a COO role for a new company. So I've got 4 things going on, all very different. All pretty interesting. Yeah. And I'm happy to dive into each one of them.
Yeah. Give us high level on all 4. Tell us what industries you're in at least.
Okay. First one is a real estate company. We are land wholesalers, buy and sell land, mainly in Washington and Florida. Second one is a hair transplant company, which is hilarious because I'm a bald guy. I legitimately own a hair transplant company.
I love it. You're clearly not a client.
We won't get too deep into that, but it's not a fit for everybody,
Got it. Okay. Makes sense.
And then a company I just acquired this year is a specialty paper manufacturing company. So high-end, eco-friendly, sustainable paper.
Love it.
And then I just started as a COO role, worked myself into an equity position for a sports accoutrement company, if you will. It's skins for helmets. So to change the look of a football, baseball, softball helmet quickly.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think those 4 industries could be more different.
They make no sense together, right?
Well, to the person listening, I bet, but I bet you there's some rhymes and reasons to your skill sets of why they make sense for you. I feel the same way. I've had a lot of people over the years, for like right now, they peer in, they go, okay, well, you've had some edible arrangements franchises, you've got several real estate companies, and you have a mastermind group and you have a podcast. Help me understand, what are you doing? And I think, and I want you to talk about this a little bit because most entrepreneurs have one, right? And I think that's actually probably phenomenal advice for most. There's a little different mindset when you're in different industries, maybe not necessarily building, but higher level thinking. So I want to get into all of that. But before we do, what is that peak for you? Like why these businesses? Why are they together? What's the bigger picture for you? What's your why? What's your motivation? Why are you doing all this?
Sure. Why these businesses? Well, they fit a criteria. The businesses, I acquired them. And we can talk about decision matrix later, but I have a specific criteria I'm looking for in a business when I acquire it. Retiring owner, dropping X amount to the bottom line, X number of years in service. And then my model is I install an operator. So I go recruit an operator who has experience in the space. I install them as the operator of that business, show them a path to equity and a salary. And then I just step back more of a board strategic role and manage the operator. Right. So once they get running, like the hair business, I spend I don't know, 2 or 3 hours a week on that.
Right.
So it frees up a lot of extra time to do other stuff. And it's just kicking off cash flow at this point.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. That's why those businesses together, because they fit a model. They fit that criteria that I set out. My why, man, I wish I had some fantastic answer for you. It's mostly, I want happiness in my life. I want time and happiness.
Yeah.
I'm in EO. We talk a lot about, time is our primary commodity.
Right.
We use the reference a lot that when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to look back and be like, man, wish I would have worked harder. I wish I would have spent more time at work. I wish I would have gotten that contract. That's not going to be what you're saying at those times. So whatever I can do to generate enough income for me to have a good life and to free up my time to spend time doing what I want to do, playing golf, hang out with my kids, traveling. That's my purpose.
Yeah. I think it's a phenomenal answer. I think that we all have something similar. I think that most entrepreneurs have something similar because freedom is what you've basically described: freedom of choice, freedom of time, freedom in your finance. And Absolutely. So I think that the route that you've chosen is to fill up your pool with multiple hoses. At least that's what I've said about myself. Yeah. I think I can fill up the pool a whole lot faster with multiple hoses. And I like your model. It's something similar to what I've done. I think back, one of my questions inside of Gathering the Kings is, if you only had 1 hour each week to work on your business, how would you do it? And so I think for you to be able to put yourself in the position where you've only got a couple of hours each week to work on the business, there's other ways for the business to grow, run, and operate. And you've figured that one out. So I definitely want to get into some of that because to replicate that, to not only just do it once, but to do it, multiple times, and then to, show other people how to do it is pretty incredible.
Yeah. Thank you.
Tell me your entrepreneurial journey. Like how did business and Matt meet?
Yeah, it's, I really shouldn't even be sitting here with you, to be honest. I spent the better part of my life pursuing flying jets. I was in the Air Force for 12 years.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I enlisted in the Air Force out of high school, and I knew I wanted to fly jets. I just didn't have the grades to get into college. So I joined, took some classes, ended up getting a scholarship to a school called Embry-Riddle. It's an aeronautical university. It's the second highest producer of Air Force pilots to the Air Force Academy.
Wow.
So went there, did really well, accelerated, got a fighter slot out of college, top 2% nationwide. Went to pilot training. I play softball. I'm a sports guy. I got hit in the head with a softball, running to first base, overthrow, hit me in the head. Dang. So not that big of a deal at the time, injury. Right. My brain was a little swollen. But what happened was I started transposing numbers and words, kind of like injury-induced dyslexia, if you will.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a long backstory, but I was ultimately medically disqualified from flying, which was devastating. I mean, you spend, a decade or more pursuing something at the highest level, and it gets taken away from you.
Yeah.
So what do you do next? I'm like, man, I'm lost.
Yeah.
So I kind of took stock of myself. The Air Force sent me to grad school down here in San Diego. I got my MBA down here. And right out of grad school, I was like, I'm going to start a company. I'm going to build a business.
Yeah.
And, that was it. I couldn't, I'm a terrible employee. I'm damn near unemployable. So I was like, I've got to start my own business. And I did that out of grad school, and we grew it to be one of the largest digital marketing agencies here in San Diego. Wow. And we sold that in 2016. I exited that position in 2016. And that was my only thing going for 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the backstory. I wasn't slinging gumballs and other stuff in elementary school. I had a dream to fly jets. That was my dream.
I mean, what a definiteness of purpose, right? Like you thought that I'm doing this, and sole focus and hours upon hours in mastery to get there and to have that switched up. Was it just because you thought yourself unemployable, or was it just the back of your mind, I'm just kind of entrepreneurial, I'm creative? Like why I'm going to start a business? Like, how did that come to you?
Yeah. Frankly, it was about the money and freedom, and that sounds shallow. I know that does in a certain way. But
we all start there.
I took a job out of grad school and I couldn't stand it. I hated it. I hated everything I was doing. I didn't like the people I was working around. I didn't like my boss. And I've got to go carve my own path. And I felt fully capable of going and starting a business.
Yeah.
And I had a fortunate investment pay off that allowed me, kind of bought me 3 or 4 years of runway. So quit my job, and I had a friend selling SEO services. He's like, dude, you got to get into this digital marketing game. And so I went and I contacted the only guy I knew from grad school who was a computer geek, if you will. Yeah. And I said, hey, do you want to start a company together? And he's like, done. So within 2 days, we had $10,000 in a bank account. We picked out a domain, we built a website, and we were off and running. And then, phones didn't ring.
Right.
So it was a tough couple of years getting that started, but sure. it was more out of, just me not wanting to be under a boss and have some set cap on my income. I wanted to set my own limits.
Yeah, exactly. I think every listener can relate to that. It's just a matter of kind of whatever that grows into, that eventually we have to get to that place of what does that actually mean, right? Like you said, even if it's just golf, spending time with your kids, choosing to do whatever you want to do, like you've got to define that. Because otherwise it's just money, and that you can make a lot of that pretty quickly, and then that doesn't suffice any longer. Okay. So along the way, what I want to know, and use any of these businesses as an example, or maybe even multiple, but I want to know of a good decision that you could share early on in a business that would be applicable for the listener to say, okay, that's really good. I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna go implement that.
I think the most so I'll go back to my digital marketing company, because we had a lot of non-success early on. And sure. Then there was a point where it turned. I brought on a consultant, and a random guy sent me a letter in the mail and said, hey, I'm a consultant. I do this. I want to meet with you. And so I brought him in. I was like, oh, sure, I'll give this guy a chance. Super impressed with them. Very EQ, if you will, very understanding. And I'm more on the IQ side, more logical, and I have a hard time empathizing with certain situations. Brought him in, and what he broke down for me in that hour, blew my mind. He's like, tell me what your daily tasks are. I told him what my daily tasks were. And a lot of them were back office stuff. I was, accounting and answering emails, stuff like that. He's like, dude, these are $15 an hour activities. He's like, where you need to be is doing these strategic things, channel partner development, other growth activities, these $2,000, $3,000, $10,000 an hour activities.
Yep.
So when I really shed those small tasks off my plate, we hired an office manager, office admin, if you will, to come in and take all this stuff off my plate. I then was focused solely on, call it 90% of my time, strategic activities, mostly channel partner development. Yep. And our business boomed for over a 2-year period.
Wow.
So that was probably just me answering this guy. No, I normally throw cold letters and emails and phone calls away, but just me answering that guy's cold letter and inviting him to my office, that conversation really changed the trajectory of our business.
Yeah. Of your future, right? Because you being able to exit that has given you a runway, right? Attachment to everything else. Okay. So what I'm hearing you say as a summary, that the listener right now is probably busy being busy.
Right.
And what they really need to focus 90% of their effort on, if they're not $1 million in revenue, which they're not, that's why they're listening, is on revenue generating activities.
I mean, my 2 CEOs that run my companies, I want at least 50 to 6% of their time focused on revenue generating activities, sales, channel partner development, partner development. And when I say channel partner development, what I'm talking about is, for example, in the digital marketing space, we would go after, call it web design agencies or PR marketing firms. So people who had different skill sets than us, that were not competitive to us, but had the same clients. Sure. So you go make one sale one time to the owner of that company, build a relationship with them, and then you start cross-referring. Right. And so all of a sudden we were getting, without any SEO, pay-per-click, social media, we were getting, 5, 10, 15 clients a month referred into us through solid channel partners. And our revenue just exploded. It was incredible.
Yeah. There's 3 leverage points that we talk about inside Gathering the Kings Mastermind. And one of them is leveraging key relationships. And that's in essence what this breaks down to. It obviously has multiple offshoots. Specifically, you're talking about revenue generating relationships. They're all revenue generating relationships, but those are pretty specific. Like, I'm going after this specific company because I know their clients and my clients align. I can help their clients. If they refer over, it's benefit to both of us. It adds value to them. It adds value to us. Very strategic, and often gets missed because we're busy. It's like the relationships get kind of like, oh, kumbaya, I'll catch up with those guys later. But relationships are everything.
Yeah. Well, even furthermore, like, it's not just, hey, I'm going to reach out to this guy over here. We built an entire playbook. We scripted out every single email, LinkedIn connection, phone call. We headed off their objections. We scripted out how the first meeting is going to go, how the second meeting is going to go. And then we just go execute the playbook. And then we have metrics to back up. Okay, I reached out to 20 people this week and I got 5 phone calls, and these phone calls turned into these meetings, and we reported on those internally. So there was a whole thought process that went behind. It was very strategic, just even getting to that strategic relationship.
Yeah.
Which is super important.
It is. And I'm just thinking of, you mentioned IQ and EQ earlier. And the reality is that most business owners are jump first, think later, which is fine. Like, that's why they're in business. And so thank goodness they were willing to take the risk and not calculate all of the, negative issues. But there does come a point where strategy, what you're talking about, is the catapult, or it's the next lever that you pull. You can't just jump. Being willing to jump, one thing, fantastic. But at some point, the strategy before you jump, it becomes equally as important. And that's what I'm hearing you say. Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I appreciate what you said. And I'm certainly, even today, I'm guilty of just going out and pushing stuff out there before a real strategy. And, sometimes it's necessary. Just get stuff out there. Right.
That's right. Yep.
So nothing really else to add, but, when you really want to, at the time we had, 40 employees. And when you really want to, I have a limited amount of time I'm at work. So there's got to be some strategy to focus my efforts, right? Where I can allocate 4 hours a day and really compartmentalize that time. And here's the exact activities. There's freedom in routine, right? Yeah. If I know I'm walking in and I've got these 3 hours dedicated to these 4 items, then I just go and bust it out. I don't have to, I'm not stressed out like, oh, what am I going to do today? And then you cloud your life with busy work. You go in, you execute the strategy, and you move on.
Yeah. Dwindled all the way down, simplifying all of that. I mean, this is just so good. It unwinds just the confused mind, the gray, the like, that we go through in business, or before we realize this understanding that you're trying to give to us. For me, step one was even like my calendar, like you're talking about. Not only putting the things on the calendar, like you're blocking out this 4 hours for these 3 things, but then looking at my calendar. That sounds so basic and simple, but looking at your calendar, not like right this second as it starts to happen, but like maybe yesterday or maybe on Sunday, you briefed the week. Not only did you do it, but then you're just thinking ahead. And that sounds so simple, but I've seen that be a game changer in business owners, especially guys that are out in a field, like literally outside working or building a business where they're not in front of a computer or, on their phone all day long. And where it's just much more difficult to follow a structure, but it's an absolute, technician hat versus an owner hat all day long.
No doubt.
Okay, let's flip the coin. What about a bad choice? What have you done that just has not worked out that we can learn from?
My probably single worst choice in business was towards the end of my digital marketing company. I organized a buyout of my business partner. I brought a private equity group in to buy my business partner out. I was 51% owner. He was 49. What preceded that, though, was we were going to sell our company to a decent sized company up in San Francisco. We were at the altar. We had our purchase agreement, my employment agreement signed and ready to execute. I seriously left them the day before money was going into escrow to go this other path.
Wow.
Subsequently, that company got gobbled up by a much larger company, and that would have been a $15, $20 million payout for me. Wow. That second bite of the apple. The choice I made to bring this private equity group in, was a personal friend of mine. It was great for a year, and then it went south. and I ended up getting a lot less money than I would have gotten. And, money comes and goes, but I look back at that decision and I felt I was kind of pressured into it through the personal relationship, and I didn't want to disappoint him. Yeah. And I should have gone with my gut and executed the other deal like I had been doing for the past 8 months, working on this deal. Right. And so looking back on that, it's kind of heartbreaking, to be honest with you, because there was that cash, and that decision would have been extremely lucrative for myself and my family.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's really easy to play the what if game. Yeah. And it's not that you don't want to play it, because you want to feel that like, and so that way we learn from it. But what are your thoughts on obviously that was a while ago. Do you kick yourself for that still, or have you kicked that feeling to the curb of like, okay, it is what it is and it's done, and I can't reminisce in that any longer?
Well, I'll tell you what, Chaz, when I look back on that, like all these things are kind of fortuitous, right? Getting hit in the head with a softball, not flying jets, not selling that company, and my mindset now. All I cared about was an exit back then. That's all I cared about. I'm going to go get my 10 or 20 million bucks, and I'm going to be done. I can have FU money. I don't need to worry about anybody anymore. But what would I sacrifice for that? Well, my health, my family life. You see pictures of me back then. I was 240 pounds. Wow. And just working all the time, 60, 80-hour weeks. It was brutal. And I didn't like my business. It was super stressful. So now I'm pursuing what we talked about earlier: time, happiness, cash flow. I don't really care about an exit. I want to make X amount per month that frees up my time to do what I really enjoy. Yeah. So that kind of epiphany that came out of that, what do they say? You never lose, you only learn. So I've learned a lot through that process.
Yeah, of course.
So I feel fortunate, you get kicked around a little bit, but what do? You come back and you build something else.
Yeah, you're right. I love the word fortunate there, because there's one thing to look at a scenario, recognize that it was maybe a bad choice, or that you could have done something differently. And then there's another thing to learn from it. But then there's another level to be thankful for it, to have actually believe that even though it maybe, if you had to do it again, you wouldn't make the same choice, but what you've learned has actually given you something greater, which that's the fortunate part. And so it's like, man, that is all mindset. Yeah. How have you gotten that piece? Was it just the fed upness of the health and the time, or was there a moment in time that you can share on the mindset piece?
Well, mindset. I mentioned earlier, I'm an EO, and these are some of my closest friends. I mostly hang around with other entrepreneurs. These are all high-level guys, high-level people. Yeah. We talk a lot about mindset and thankfulness and positivity. When I left that company, I was devastated. When I got kind of kicked out of my own company, my company kind of got stolen from me, to be honest with you. I was pretty devastated for a while, and it caused you to reflect. So I took a step back, said, okay, I've got some cash. What can I control? Well, I can control my time and my health right now. So I just really focused on getting back in shape, eating healthy, and feeling more positive about myself. Yeah. But it took a couple of years to kind of get through this cycle where I then started, okay, well, I'm going to focus on these activities now. I'm going to start this company, wholesaling land, and I'm going to go acquire companies because I know how to do that. So there's not like one day I woke up and like this big epiphany, but it was more of like a process and support from people who've been through similar situations before. Yeah. And, controlling what I can control. I can't control that stuff that happened yesterday. It's gone, right? It's what I can control right now and moving forward.
Yeah. Such good, thick, ripe mindset. Love it. What's your process, or what are the steps that you follow making decisions now with the new mindset?
Man, I wish I had a really good answer for you. A lot of it's based on gut feel. Sure. I have a decision matrix for, how I hire an operator to come into my company. Sure. I have a very strict process, which I teach to people. I've been invited to conferences, and I outline my process for recruiting a high-level A player. And there's a whole decision-making process through that. And there's kind of tests and trip ups and other stuff that kind of, you got a funnel, and at the end, one or two people get spit out.
Right.
So there's a lot of decisions in that. And I'm more of a process guy. I write this stuff down and go execute these little, like, minute steps, if you will. That's just how my brain works.
Right.
For a lot of decisions I make, I'll set a criteria, and then anything that doesn't fit that criteria is immediately out. You've heard that term. It's either, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. Right. So same thing with, the t-shirts that I put on every day. Almost all my t-shirts are plain blue shirts. I don't want to spend 5 minutes in there figuring out my outfit. I go in there, grab a shirt, throw it on, I'm out the door. Right. I don't waste any time on little minutia like that.
That's right.
So I don't have a great answer for like, oh, I've got this incredible, decision-making process. I have many decision-making processes depending on the subject at hand, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it does. It does. I mean, I guess the reality of the question is that I'm a process guy. And so that question comes natural to me. I would say that most entrepreneurs aren't necessarily process guys. Most entrepreneurs are jump first, figure out the rest later, which is great. There's a level to both you and I that are like that, but we're obviously a little bit more process driven. And so that benefit, even though in this moment you're saying it's gut, it comes from frameworks that you've created that give you confidence, as well as you've done it multiple times over now. You being a process guy, what you've done in that, you've just created frameworks for each one of these types of decisions. And so maybe it's not one overarching process. Maybe your overarching process is to refer to the framework that you've already.
Exactly.
So I think that's probably just as encouraging as anything else, because the listener listening right now is, they're all over the place. Maybe not necessarily unorganized, but they're just doing a lot. They're busy being busy, like we talked about, and wearing a lot of hats, probably working a bunch like you were, probably even on the edge of burnout like you were, and all these things that you just described. And a lot of decisions are coming at them, and they don't know how to handle it because they haven't created frameworks. They haven't thought ahead and gone, okay, so when this comes to my table, this is how I act. So I think all this has just been incredible. You've been phenomenal so far. I want to switch to the speed round. The first question in the speed round, this is going to be interesting because you've got so many different businesses. If you could only track one metric, this is the question, what would that one metric be? Forever and ever, you can only pick one.
Man, it depends on the type of business, but I've got to go with a cost per acquisition number.
Yeah.
If you're not acquiring customers at something that is quantifiably profitable, right, then it's a losing proposition. Cost per acquisition.
Cost per acquisition. How does a guy who hasn't hit his first million, who's probably working off of word of mouth and just, making it happen, how does he dial in? Just real quick, since you've done this and you also ran an agency, just give us a 60-second on that.
You've got to understand where your marketing dollars are going. You've got to understand where your leads are coming from and how you convert those leads. So, you pay for traffic to hit your website. How many of those convert? What channels are they coming from? How much do those channels cost? And when I get one conversion, what is my average value of a customer? And then you back into a cost per acquisition. And, if you're spending $400 to acquire a client, your average, client revenue is $1,500 or $2,000. That could be a good model.
Yeah.
I see a lot of e-commerce companies that, they're upside down and they're building that. They want that lifetime value of that customer, right? So the cost per acquisition is more than the first year they're going to make from that customer, but they know they're going to have that customer for 5 years.
Right.
So you've got to really understand what each customer is worth to you.
Yeah.
On average, it's hard to distill it down to every single customer. If you got one product, that's easy. But if you got a service-based business and the price points are all over the board, you got to work on averages. But you got to know your traffic sources and what you're paying, and that's really difficult to do in digital marketing.
Yeah, 100%, especially to nail it down to specifically where it's coming from, like you said. Quick question on this, because I heard this on a podcast maybe this week or last, I can't remember, but the guy that was talking about the cost per acquisition. And then comparing it to the LTV, but in the LTV, he broke down the gross, the net, not the gross. Because, for example, it cost me $200 to get a new client. That client's worth $1,000 to me, but really, after all my expenses, he's only worth $100 to me net profit. So that it's costing me $200 to acquire $100. That's actually a losing math equation. Most business owners who we are even tracking are using the full LTV as opposed to the net. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. I mean, what do they say? Top line is vanity, bottom line is sanity, something like that.
Right.
A lot of people get caught up in that top line number. And I know guys who have $10 million companies and they're barely making 200 grand of themselves.
Right.
So absolutely, bottom line is the most important number you could track, but you can't get there unless you know the previous numbers. You've got to control your expenses. You've got to get your gross margin to where it needs to be and manage that, right? You got to manage your cost of goods, get you that gross margin, and then manage your operating expenses. That's stuff. The operating expenses are stuff we can control. So it all plays into that. I guess my point behind the cost per acquisition is that if you can figure all that out and it makes sense to the bottom line, then all you got to do is throw more money at it. Right. If you've got a profitable funnel or multiple funnels, whatever that is, whether it's online or offline, and your cost per acquisition where it has to be, you can go strike deals and you can give them 10% of whatever to get that cost per acquisition to $400. Right. But then again, you just throw money on it, right? You just, that's how you scale, right? If you don't know that stuff, it's hard to scale.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. You gotta have the viable lead source, track the numbers, and pour the gasoline on. Okay. I've got a question for you about books. What would you recommend as far as a book recommendation for a six-figure business owner?
I got to be honest with you. I don't read a lot of business books anymore. I find a lot of them boring. Probably the most impactful book I've ever read that I refer back to on a regular basis. I read it 15 years ago. And it may sound kind of cliche, but it's how to win friends and influence people. When I read it at the time, some of the stuff was like, oh yeah, of course. But there's some tricks in there and some other stuff that when you walk into a room with someone who's kind of cold to you, who you don't know, but you're trying to enroll them into your program, you can really kick down some barriers with some of these things. And business is about relationships. If you want to build some of these relationships I've been talking about, people have to like you. They have to trust you. So that's one of those books I constantly kind of refer back to in my head that, okay, do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Phenomenal book. Last question here for you, Matt. I want to know if you could whisper in the younger Matt's ear, what would you tell
him? Oh man, you're gonna make me cry. I guess I would say that, everything's gonna be all right. You're a good person. You're going to be happy. You're going to have a fulfilled life. Because, there's a lot of stress that comes, as a kid and a lot of uncertainty in certain situations. So, just reassuring that person that things are going to be good.
Yeah. Do you think that would have given you confidence through a couple of tough times?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's times in a younger life when you're walking a path alone and you feel alone. So yeah, certainly.
Yeah. Not to, like you said, not to, make it too cliche, but we don't get those moments, unfortunately. Yeah. But the mindset of sharing those things, it should bring that perspective forward for the listener, even right now, right? Like they're maybe younger, quote unquote, than us in their business journey. And so maybe you've just gifted that same confidence to someone here today. But I still think that you and I can take that same confidence going forward because there's a lot yet to have for you and I. And so, I just love the perspective, love the mindset. Like I told you, our stories are somewhat similar, seeing this, investor mindset, more so rather than a business, builder, maybe more of a high level, investor mindset, which I just so appreciate because you can still get things done by pulling certain levers without actually having to do it. And I've just been that guy. I just did for so long. When you learn the lever of winning friends and influencing people, you can build teams and you can build structure and you can build frameworks and all the things that you've discussed with us here today. So thank you. How can the listener connect with you, Matt? Maybe they want to learn some of these frameworks. Maybe they want to see you at a conference. Maybe they want to just chat with you. How can they find you?
Well, I have a very common name, Matt Walker. So you go search Matt Walker on LinkedIn, you'll probably pull up, 5,000 people. Uh-huh. But I have my companies. You can always submit a contact through my company. So greenfieldpaper.com. Greenfield Paper is my paper company. My Hair Transplant MD is my hair transplant company. I've got a company called Seaport Assets. You can contact me there. Or you can send me an email, Matt, M-A-T-T, at seaportassets.com.
Love it. Well, I know the right ones will reach out, and you've just been incredible. We'll put all that in the show notes as well, so they can easily connect with you. And dude, we wish you nothing but blessing, whether it's from the golf course or hanging out with your children, like you said, or buying another business. We would just wish you nothing but the best. Thank you for being here, man.
Thanks, Chaz. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks for listening to Gathering the Kings. We hope you got a ton of value today and learned a thing or two about taking your business to 7 figures and beyond. If you desire more and want a community around you to help you get there, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. That's gatheringthekings.com. And I want you to apply for our next Becoming a King 90-day intensive. We are extremely exclusive by nature as a group. What that means is that we're really wanting only the entrepreneurs who take their business and targets super serious to apply. So if that's you, you think you got what it takes to level up your business, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com and apply. And we will see you on the other side.